All right, everybody, welcome back into another live edition of the Patriots Beat podcast here on the CLNS Media Network, presented by our wonderful friends over at Game Time. It is Brian Hines back as always with Alex Barth. And the Patriots veterans reported to training camp tomorrow. Our first training camp practice is tomorrow on Wednesday. But Barth and I were down at Gillette Stadium today. We talked to Gerard Mayo. We talked to 4 players. We got into some of the some stuff that we'll be expecting during training camp and what those players are expecting. But over the weekend, we also got some news. We got some roster movement before camp here, which usually happens. We got some trade reports. So we'll start with that. We'll break some of that down, and then we'll tell you what Gerard Mayo said today. And we're talking Brandon Aiyuk again because we got a little more details on this Brandon Aiyuk trade request. He did report to training camp today, which we can add. So he showed up despite requesting a trade, but we also heard from Mike Florio over the weekend from Pro Football Talk that a number of teams tried to trade for Aiyuk during the draft, and one of them was the Patriots. He said they offered the 49ers a second-round pick, which obviously was rejected, and that they were also, Florio said there were teams that were interested in paying Aiyuk that magic number, which was $28 million per year. So if you figure the Patriots were ready to trade a second-round pick, you figure they're one of those teams that were ready to pay Brandon Aiyuk $28 million. So again, it obviously didn't happen. He's still in San Fran. He requested a trade, but he's at training camp. The Patriots used the pick. They moved back. They got Jalen Polk. So I don't know. What were your just kind of reactions to that rumor? I still think we're kind of in the same boat where we're not expecting Brandon Aiyuk to get traded at this point. He'll probably stick with the Niners, but I'd say it's encouraging that you hear that the Patriots are willing to give up draft capital. They're willing to invest resources to kind of get a top of the line wide receiver when these guys become available.
Yeah, and that's the point. The story here isn't that they missed out on Brandon Aiyuk. I mean, I'm sure some people will make it that way. Maybe that's part of it. But to me, the story is like, this is the deal. This is the deal I've been talking about for a while now. Second round pick, and you give them the contract, and they're ready to do it. So whether it is Aiyuk, whether it is somebody next spring, Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, like they're ready to make this deal. They are ready to put this offer out there that is the offer it takes to get, a top flight wide receiver. So all the discussions about they won't pay a guy or, they're going to try to do it in aggregate or whatever. They've tried with Calvin Ridley via free agency. They've tried via trade with Brandon Aiyuk. Like this is something they're working on and they haven't gotten it done yet. And that's, there's an old saying, you haven't really caught the fish till it's in the boat. So this isn't me giving them credit for doing something they haven't done, but I think we can put the point being, I think we can put the discussion to bed of whether or not they're willing to do it. Yep. It does appear they're willing to do it. Now you just need to get the right scenario where they can get it across the finish line. As I've said, I think that's more realistic in the spring of 2025 than it is right now, but it does seem like something that they're working on.
Yep. Yeah, that's the big thing that they're willing. We saw in free agency, they were willing to pay for one of these guys, right? Like they offered Calvin Ridley a big deal, and now you get the point that they might trade a pick and pay a guy. So they're willing to try to go out of their way to acquire one of those guys, but now you have to do it. Right? You missed out on Calvin Ridley. Brandon Aiyuk probably, again, doesn't look like he's going to get traded. So whether it's T. Higgins makes it to free agency or you have to trade a pick and then sign him, or DK Metcalf, we've talked a lot about, like you have to do it. But the fact that they know they're in the boat where they know they have to get one of these, difference makers at wide receiver. Mayo said today, he was kind of indirectly asked about Aiyuk because he can't comment on a guy who's, under contract on another team. But someone asked him, like, if a wide receiver requested a trade, would you be interested? And he said, we're interested in, upgrading our roster, getting the best players as possible. So it seems like they know that they still need, even though they drafted Polk there in the second round, they drafted Baker in the fourth, like they still know they need a number one or an alpha or whatever you want to call it. And their actions have showed that they're willing to invest the resources, whether it's money, draft capital, or both, in order to go get that guy. So I'd say,
Right.
it's again, you don't want to give them credit because they haven't done it, but I'd say it's a positive that it seems like they know that's an issue that they're willing to go out and try to address.
Yeah, and now again, I'm not going to give him credit for doing it,
Yeah.
but they're making the right moves, which is the right step.
Yep. I know it's still probably a next offseason thing, but another receiver who's kind of got some drama going around, Amari Cooper. They said he might not report to camp. I didn't see anything today if he actually did report to camp, but Cleveland, Alex Van Pelt, the connection there, would that be something you'd be interested in? Maybe a different wide receiver option beyond Aiyuk there. And again, I don't know if that would happen, at this point of the calendar of this football season, but maybe something. If something happens there, would Amari Cooper be
Sure.
interested? Would you be interested in?
So I'd be interested in Amari Cooper in theory. I would actually rather do that now than later. And he's not going to be worth as much. Amari Cooper's 30.
Yeah.
Right. He turned 30 in June. And historically, wide receivers drop off steeply at the age of 30. He, to me, would almost be the bridge guy. And I got to pull up exactly what his contract is.
I think it's like 20 million, something like something. Wasn't he like
for how much longer?
I think he's in the last year of his deal.
Oh, this is last year's deal. So to me, like if you just want to get a guy for Drake May now, I would go get Amari Cooper. I'd trade a fourth for Amari Cooper today. Right. And you have him and he's in Van Pelt's offense again and all that. And then next year you focus on the big fish because Amari Cooper's not the big fish. Maybe you keep Cooper. Maybe you extend him and maybe next year your wide receiver room is, again, I'll use this one name because I keep using it. DK Metcalf, Amari Cooper, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, Pop Douglas, which pretty good, right? Pretty freaking good. So I mean, I like the idea of Cooper. Again, I think he costs less. I think that is a move you can make now or during camp. He's not the answer. He's not the be all end all though. And if I wouldn't trade a second round pick for him, next year he's 31. He's going to need a new contract. I don't think he's a substitute for Brandon Aiyuk or a DK Metcalf or a T Higgins or somebody like that. There'd still be value in getting him though. It's just different.
Yeah. He's more of like a Band-Aid option where Aiyuk is someone who will be here.
He's a bridge guy.
Yeah. So, and as Coop says here in the comments, why not see what Polk and Baker can do this year? That's where kind of I've been at for a while. Like you might as well just see what the kids can give you. Aiyuk was like the one where I was like, okay, if you can get Brandon Aiyuk, he's 26. He's proven to be a top 10, top 12 wide receiver in the league. Like that's a different story. But I think where we're kind of at now in the calendar, it's like, okay, let's see what these young guys can do. And then, we address this issue, big picture, next offseason. And someone said, like, who are the top projected wide receivers next year? Travis Hunter, I think, is going to play corner in the NFL, but it's Luther Burden from Missouri and Tech McMillan from Arizona are like the two big prizes at the top there. Anyone like Emeka Uboka could be a first round pick from Ohio State, but he's more of like that slot role. So that's another thing. If Polk or Baker, if one of those two guys have a good year, like that could adjust the type of receiver you need next year. So, excuse me, but that could kind of change. But anything else on Aiyuk there? Just again, big picture, like good that they're willing to put these resources in, but now you just have to do it. So we'll see what happens there. But we can transition back to training camp. We did get some roster movements over the weekend, and the Patriots placed Terrell Jennings, a UDFA running back, on the PUP list. And they also, they placed linebacker Jontre Hunter on the PUP list, and then they eventually cut him. So they have an open roster spot. Maybe another running back comes in here now because we were already talking that they were kind of slim there. And then, that they put Terrell Jennings on the PUP list, and we'll see if anyone else lands on that before tomorrow. They were doing conditioning today. So, Kendrick Bourne, I know Mayo said he was progressing well, but Cole Strange, maybe someone else lands on the PUP list. But any thoughts on those moves or what they could do with this open roster spot here as they enter camp?
Yeah, I mean, they worked out a couple players yesterday. Demetric
Yep.
Felton stands out to me. If you've been watching the show for a while, I was a fan of his back during the 2021 draft. Converted wide receiver, so he's that, true pass catching back if they want somebody in that role. Played for Alex Van Pelt in Cleveland for a couple years, also has special teams experience. Adding to that running back room, especially with the kid from Florida A&M, going on PUP. Who's the running back that went on PUP?
Terrell Jennings.
Terrell Jennings. Thank you.
Yep.
Terrell Jennings going on PUP, just adding. That's a position where I think it makes sense to add some more competition. I also do wonder, though, with that roster spot opening up, we've seen them in the past go through the first week or two of camp at 89 players.
See what they need.
Right. See what they need. See what happens. Maybe there's some veterans that are waiting to sign that once the pads come on, know they need to get into camp. Stephon Gilmore. And you have that spot open for them. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't fill it right away. But, looking at the guys that worked out yesterday, Felton would make a ton of sense to me.
Yep. Felton, they also brought in Gary Brightwell, who was a running back, played at Arizona, and then 2 guards and a defensive tackle. So, yeah, Felton would make a ton of sense for the reasons you kind of laid out there. So, yeah, like they're down. We were already talking about running back, and now they're down another one. So, maybe something happens there. Maybe kicker or something along those lines. But Terrell Jennings on PUP, John Trey Hunter was on PUP and then let go. So open roster spot. We'll see. We'll probably log off here. Then 10 minutes later, we'll get a couple more guys on the PUP list. That's how it usually tends to go. But some healthy guys. Javon Baker is back. He was dealing with a thumb injury throughout the spring. He was limited. He was on the bottom practice fields most of the spring. We didn't see much of him. So he is back with his thumb injury. They posted a picture of him catching a ball, so it looks like he's going to be good to go. Mayo said he was cleared. And then 6th round pick Marcellus Dial. Do we ever find out what was wrong with him? I don't think we knew, but Mayo said he was cleared as well. So they'll get Dial back in the secondary. He was limited throughout the spring, and Baker back as well. Baker probably the bigger story, I'd say, at that wide receiver position, but just good to see those 2 guys back and cleared here as they about to start their first training camp.
Yeah, and that's a good sign, especially for Baker. He's, you want him to get in the rhythm of things. You want him to get going, and him being involved is good. Like, we've seen what missing a rookie training camp can do to a wide receiver. Yep. So good news that he's back, that he's cleared. Knowing it was a thumb injury, it makes a lot more sense. We saw him in the spring where he would run routes with the receivers and they just wouldn't throw him the ball. Yeah. So that makes a lot more sense. And good on him. He very easily could have said, you know what, I'm hurt. I'm not going to practice today, but he got out there. He got the mental reps in. That's important. And then with Dial, steep competition at the cornerback room. So you miss camp, you're not going to make the team at that position. Definitely not. So he had to get back out there, and it sounds like he'll be back out there.
Yep. So I think that was all the news, right? I didn't miss anything there. Aiyuk.
I think that was pretty much it. Yeah.
PUP guys, the cut, and then Baker and Dial are cleared. All right. So that is up-to-date news there before the first practice of training camp tomorrow. We will take a very quick break here. We'll hear from our friends over at Game Time, and then we will get back and talk about a little bit of what Gerard Mayo had to say down at Gillette Stadium today. I got to talk to you guys about Game Time, which is the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, and it makes getting tickets faster and easier because prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guaranteed, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying all your MLB tickets. They have flash deals to save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event, and zone deals to save if you're looking to sit in a specific section. It is baseball season, and the Red Sox are hot, and while they're going on the road for the next week, they'll be back in Fenway against the Yankees, where you can see All-Star Game MVP Jarren Duran as the Red Sox continue to make their playoff push. And if you're in the Boston area, if you're around Fenway, Cask and Flagon, Bleacher Bar, getting a bite to eat, getting a drink, Game Time has last-minute deals where you can save up to 60% off on buying last-minute tickets for sports. So make sure you check the Game Time app right before first pitch to make sure you're not missing any last-minute deals. And you can even get your comedy, theater, or concert tickets on Game Time as well. So take the guesswork out of buying all your MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Might have to update that because the Red Sox are no longer hot. But Gerard Mayo spoke this morning down at Gillette, hit on a few big things: quarterback position, offensive line. The first thing he had to say, though, was everyone was present. There won't be any training camp holdouts. And then the obvious two we all looked at was, Matthew Judon, Devon Godchaux. We know those guys are interested in new contracts, and Mayo kind of made it sound like he's interested in giving those to them. He called them impactful special players on the defense. He said they still have a great relationship with them. He wants them to be here. Elliot Wolf wants them to be here. But they still don't have a contract adjustment. So are you expecting anything before 11 a.m. tomorrow when we take the field for the first training camp, or is this going to kind of linger into camp? And have you kind of changed your opinion on anything since we were on here last Wednesday about paying either of these guys or giving them new money on their deals?
I still think Judon's a guy you try to bring back. I mean, the window's closed to maximize his trade value. So whether that's, I definitely give him the money to play this year. If I got to tack one more year on, so be it. Godchaux, I'm a little less enthusiastic about paying. He has some money on his deal. He's older. It seems like his role could get phased out of the defense. I'm not expecting much before 11 tomorrow because you got to remember these guys just got back in the building. I'm sure they'll talk some about it today, but the window I use is like, are you on the field for the first day of pads? Are you going? Because I think we're going to see both guys limited tomorrow and limited for the first few days. And you know what? They can be. They've been in this league a long time. They know what they're doing. The next couple days are essentially the football equivalent of icebreakers. So if Matthew Judon's not on the field tomorrow, whatever, can they get something done by the first day of pads? If not, that's when you kind of start to take a longer look at it and say, all right, is there something we need to worry about here? Should they be talking trade? Things like that.
Yep. And Mayo said like the expectation is they'll practice if they're here, but that probably is like more when the pads come on, right? Like they can make it kind of easy. So that's a good kind of deadline. When do you think that'll be? Monday? They practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They're off Saturday. And then they practice Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So like Monday, Tuesday,
Monday or Tuesday. Yeah. They're never really clear the exact rules. And because I think it's like you have to be 5 days in with an off day, but does today count as a day?
Yeah.
And are they going to do it as soon as possible? Because I think if you wait till the second day you're eligible, you get like an added padded practice or something. The rules are a mess, but early next week, I would say.
Yep. They can go pads 2 days in a row, right?
You can go two in a row.
They rarely do, but
no, they'll go 2 in a row. I think you can't do more than 3 and 4. So you couldn't go. Okay. You couldn't go 4 or 5. I think you can go 3 in a row, but it has to be an off day the next day. It can't be no pad again. This is for all the nonsense bureaucratic red tape that exists in the NFL rulebook, and about the salary cap being a pain in the ass and all that. There is nothing that is quite cracking the Rosetta Stone like trying to figure out the rules for padded practices. It's insanely complex. I couldn't tell you why, but it is. So,
yeah. I mean, maybe they go like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, no pads, Monday, Tuesday, pads, and then they're off Wednesday. So maybe that's how it works. But early next week, they'll be in pads at least one of those days. So that'll be a good kind of deadline to watch those Judon in Godchaux situations, see how those continue to unfold now that they're back in the building, see if they make any progress. I will say I think Mike Reese said like they've been talking to Judon, so there's been some communication there. We haven't really heard much at all from if they've been talking to Godchaux. So it seems like my light just went out there. I don't know what happened there, but seems like they're kind of on the same page. Like Judon seems to be the preference, right? Like you want that guy on your defense, so then maybe we'll see what happens with Godshot. But other things Mayo had to talk about, QB1. He said Jacoby Brissett is the most pro-ready guy. He comes out of the sprain where he was the top quarterback in the spring. He is going to open the summer as the top quarterback, but he did not rule out Drake Maye kind of taking advantage or earning the starting job. He said he'll have the opportunity if he kind of comes out and lights it up, right? Like, and he could earn that job. And he kind of said, and whether how much you want to put into this, whether it's just, speaking words, he said he was asked, like, will outside factors impact Drake Maye's timeline? We've talked so much about, will you sit him down for the first month while they still figure out this offensive line? Mayo said it was just kind of, he's got to outperform Jacoby. That's all he's really worried about. So are you buying that? And are you okay with this plan that they're still rolling with Jacoby entering the summer as the starter? And we're, kind of taking it slow with Drake Maye, but if he kind of tears it up on the practice field, he can still earn that spot.
Yeah. I mean, he is. I don't disagree with anything Gerard Mayo said today. Like, he looked like the starter in the spring. They were operating in the spring like he was the starter, and if he should. Who else would come into camp, I guess, as the starter? You're not going to have Drake Maye come into camp. Now, can he win it in camp? Yeah. And I may be more convinced now than I was before that there is a chance he can start week 1. I still don't think it's going to happen, but I think there's a chance because Mayo was really hammering home. That was lost in that. I think people get excited about the headline of Gerard Mayo saying Drake Maye can start week 1. Well, Mayo was also like, he has to really blow it out of the water, right? He has to really, really impress us. So I still think it's going to be Jacoby Brissett week 1, but it sounds like they're leaving the door open. Like, I don't think that was coach speak. I think that was said with conviction. So we'll see. It's on Drake Maye's plate now to be able to go out there and take the job.
Yeah. I still think he has a chance. I just think he's that talented. But, we've talked a lot, like Jacoby deserves some respect too. He's not going to like roll over and just give this thing to him. But I think Maye can make a really, good surge. When Mayo said, like, if he lights it up, I just thought like of that Mac Jones practice versus the Giants, where he just took that job from Cam Newton. Like, it's up to Drake Maye if he has one or two of those practices late in the summer after he has a consistent performance throughout. Like, he could take that. But do you think
is he going to get the blocking needed to have that kind of performance?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Do you think it's coach speak that like the outside factors have nothing to do with this? Like, it's just Jacoby versus Drake, or do you think like they know, like, if the offensive line is a real mess, we can't put Drake Maye back there, even if he maybe does or earn the starting job?
I mean, I think if he proves that it can be a non-issue, but that's, again, going above and beyond. Like, if he goes out there in the preseason, he's throwing dots, constantly pressured, then yeah, you put him out there. But that's a massive, massive, massive ask. And I don't think it's fair to count on him to do that.
Yep. Yeah, and that could be tough to show in the practice fields when you're not getting you're not getting touched. Like, and that's another thing with Maye. Like, his legs are such a game changer. Like, he was a great scrambling quarterback. He had one of the higher efficiencies as a college scrambler. So that could be a big factor that we don't really get to see on the practice fields, but on the preseason games more so. So that's the quarterback position. The other kind of only position he talked about, Mayo, that is the offensive line. He kept reiterating, like, the best 5. We're going to play the best 5. We're going to play the best 5. Didn't pigeonhole Mike Onwenu into a tackle or guard. Seems like they're just trying to find that best 5 as they were in the spring when they started with Big Mike at right tackle.
Oh, we do have a little bit of breaking news here related to something we were talking about earlier.
Is it a PvP guy?
No, according to Jordan Schultz, the Browns and star wide receiver Mari Cooper have agreed to a restructured 1-year contract, guaranteeing his $20 million and adding an additional $5 million per sources. Cooper entered, and he gives his stats. Yeah, that guy's not getting traded.
Yeah,
not this year. He will be a Cleveland Brown in 2024.
Yeah,
so we can throw that one out.
All right, but hey, maybe he hits free agency next year and you can get him for a year. But
maybe.
Yeah, that's still a Band-Aid option if he's 31 years old. But all right, scratch the Amari Cooper thought from existence. But offensive line, Wasn't, you know, pigeonholing again Onwenu into guard or tackle. We saw him in the sprain open at tackle and then ended the sprain kicked inside into guard. He was also asked about Chuks Okorafor, and he said, based off his experience, he's most likely going to start at left tackle, which is what we kind of expected. So O-line is such a big question. We've talked about it so much over the past few months. What'd you think of his comments? And I don't know. Do you think they should have a plan for Big Mike, or do you like that they're like, okay, let's just kind of see if maybe Caedan Wallace earns the right tackle spot, and then Big Mike can play right guard, or Nick Leverett or one of those, Layden Robinson, one of those guards forces Big Mike outside. Would you rather have a concrete plan, or do you like that they're kind of keeping this open and maybe let it in the best five come to them and work their way out?
It seems like the door's open for Michael Onwenu to play guard, kind of like you said there, the best five, whatever that is, whatever that's going to be. We'll find out in camp. Now, the struggle with that is that's going to continue into the regular season, right? I've talked about this. You can't necessarily get that done in camp. So the offensive line is going to be a work in progress in the regular season, as I've been saying. And at that point, we will see if they can keep the quarterback protected. But there's that group's going to be a major. There's going to be a lot of moving pieces there all summer, because you move Mike Onwenu inside. Now, who's your starting right tackle? He's outside. You still don't know about guard. Backups are going to be important. Wherever Mike Onwenu is, he needs to have a good backup, because you're probably going to have him flip at some, there's a real chance he's going to flip at some point and go back to the other spot. Who's the backup left tackle? They're really locked in on Chuks Okorafor, but I've given my thoughts on that plan. And if he doesn't work out, what's plan B? Right. Is it Caedan Wallace? But if Mike Onwenu's playing guard, Caedan Wallace has to be your starting right tackle probably. So now you're talking about Calvin Anderson, Vidarian Lowe, or if not, and Caedan Wallace is there, what happens when Mike Onwenu has to kick back inside? Are you keeping Caedan Wallace at left tackle and going to the next right tackle? Or are you moving Wallace out there? There's very little depth. As much as we talk about the starters being an issue, there's very little depth. So it's going to be a work in progress, I think, throughout the summer. And I really think into the fall. And it sounds like they kind of are aware of that.
Yep. I still think they'd be at their best with Big Mike at right guard and then Caedan Wallace at right tackle, because you get both of those guys more at their natural position. I would be higher on Caedan Wallace if he just plays right tackle, because that's where he spent the last 4 years at Penn State, right? And he was a third-round pick, so you can say maybe you can expect that guy to play right out the gate more at his natural position. So I think that would be the best. The whole right side is natural position. City So at left guard is kind of his natural position. He played there at college, but he played right last year's rookie year. But then, Chuks Okorafor is the big question at left tackle. That's a switch, and it's a guy who's kind of been a, borderline starting right tackle throughout his career. And then, as you said, the depth, is Calvin Anderson the left tackle? What's going to happen with all these guards, right? Layden Robinson, Nick Leverett, still have Antonio Maffey, Jake Andrews. So there's just tons of questions on the offensive line, and we'll get the second half of these preseason games are going to be very important for a ton of these guys. And last year against the Titans, that preseason game, they couldn't move the ball because the offensive line was just a mess. So we're going to get some important snaps for a lot of these guys, because they have a lot of bodies, but can some of these guys kind of separate themselves in those preseason games? That's going to be important for them, because again, go back to whatever the hell the pad rules are. They're not in pads often in camp. Contact is pretty limited. So those preseason games will be big for those guys. But yeah, tons of questions on the starting five, the backup five. It's plenty to work out over the next few weeks there along the offensive line.
Right.
Yep. Anything else from Mayo? Those were kind of the big things. Quarterback, offensive line, everyone's present, Judon, Godshot included. One other interesting kind of note I thought was, and we've talked about I don't know if we talked about this on the show. I've wrote about it a few times, but they're starting practices later this year. Bill would start them at 9:30. Currently scheduled practices are at 11 a.m. And Mayo was asked about that today, and he said they used to have meetings at the end of the day, and instead they're going to take those meetings and put them at the beginning of the day. So you can kind of get in, you can correct your mistakes from the previous day, you have everything kind of fresh in mind, and then you can just hit the practice field right after that, which I think that kind of makes more sense. I don't know, just fresh in mind, your performance and everything as you take the field. So instead of, seeing it late in the day and then going home and maybe losing that. So I think that kind of makes some sense. Judon Bentley too said like you play games later in the afternoon, so they have to deal with the heat now and everything. So little change there, but anything else from Mayo? Or we talked to David Andrews, Jacoby Brissett, Jonathan Jones, and who else? Who am I missing? Jacoby Brissett, Judon Bentley.
Yeah.
So anything else from any of those guys that stood out to you or anything?
The practice timing thing's interesting. Just, later in the day, there's a conditioning element to that too. Mayo said they'd stagger the practice times. I think we're going to see, you kind of knew, I don't want to say every Patriots practice was the same under Belichick, but like, I don't know, maybe it was me having done this long enough. Like there were 3 or 4 kinds of practices and you sort of knew within the first half hour what you were going to get. Yeah. It definitely feels like things might be more varied this year. I don't know if that's good or bad. It just, that kind of was the vibe I got today, is that there's going to be more variance from practice to practice, which we also sort of saw in the spring, albeit in a very limited sample size. From the players, not much. It's crazy that Jonathan Jones is the longest tenured defensive player on the team.
I know.
I feel as if I didn't feel old enough. Did you see yesterday the Jets announced their throwbacks, which are the uniforms they wore?
It was like the Mark Sanchez jerseys. And
right. Yeah. So I guess they're actually the 60s ones, which those were a revival of because they have the gray face mask, not the green. But like it's still, and those are the best Jets uniforms.
Yeah.
With the shoulder stripes, 100%. Little patch, white helmet, football on the side. But John Jones being the oldest defensive player on this year, not oldest, but longest tenured defense player, it seems crazy. And still doing it. And he's going to be a good player. He got asked today where he's going to play because that's obviously been a big question. He said wherever. So we're still going to have to wait at least another day on that answer. But no, I thought it was interesting. Tom Curran was on NBC Sports Boston last night, and he said something along the lines of like, this quote stood out obviously because it sounds like something our friend Mike Cadlick would say. The Patriots need a bunch of SpongeBobs. They need a bunch of guys that are just super eager to go and ready to work and smile on their face, even if it's not going to be easy, whatever. Like, you talk to the leadership of the team today, so obviously it comes with a grain of salt. But a guy like David Andrews, who is not going to be here when the Patriots are in the next contention window. Jonathan Jones, who's in his 30s and is in a contract year. Jacoby Brissett, whose replacement is in the building.
Yeah.
These guys all seem to get where they're at and what this year is about. And that's not a given. Now, it's really easy to say that on July 23rd. Let's see what happens when we get into the season and they lose some games and where they're at there. But this continues to be a case of, and I said this about the coaching staff when they were hired and we talked to them for the first time. They get it. I think there's an understanding in the building of where this team is at. Now, you got to act the right way on top of that. You can't just get it and head in the right direction. You have to act accordingly. But I do think I do think the people at the top, whether that be the coaches, whether that be the leadership of the players, the 4 guys we talked to today, I would assume are all going to be captains, right? David Andrews has been a captain for a long time. Judon Bentley has been a captain for a long time. Has John Jones been a captain? He should be.
He should have been. He hasn't been.
And I don't think it's a Julian Edelman scenario where like he should be, but he doesn't want to be. That was always the theory anyway with Edelman. And Brissett, starting quarterback will be a captain, you would think. So, these guys all seem like they get it, and you hope that trickles down, and you hope the attitude's right. But they seem to be on the right page.
Yep, and Mayo was even asked like what a successful season looks like today. And
right. Good point.
He kind of said, I have the quote right here. He says, In my eyes, it's really about the foundation. Have we put together a good foundation of a combination of young and older players to really start competing? It would be great to get up here and say we're going to win a Super Bowl, but once again, it's about the process. I tell you guys all the time, it's about process and progress in moving forward. So, yeah, as you said, they all seem to kind of know where they're at right now. Like, they're not the Chiefs, they're not the dynasty Patriots, right? Like, they're not the Super Bowl favorites going into the year. Like, this is kind of year one of this retool, rebuild, whatever you want to call it. Like, lay that foundation. You have some intriguing young pieces, some good veterans. Like, they could still win some games, but just lay that foundation. What's the saying on their wall? Process, progress, something. I don't know, but lay that foundation. Like, this is where, like, this is what you're going to build off of moving forward, and they all seem to kind of know that, which seems like they're in a good spot. But again, it's July 23rd. We haven't even had a training camp practice. We'll see if that can kind of continue, even if things start to go south during the year and whatnot. But any last thoughts? Anything indeed, or we can get on to training camp day one tomorrow.
Yeah, we're on a camp. That's where we're
All
at.
right. We are on to camp. If you missed any of our training camp previews, we have a defensive preview and an offensive preview, 2 separate episodes on the YouTube page. So go check those out in preparation for tomorrow. We will be back tomorrow at some point after practice to break down day one. You can make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you do know when we are going to go live. You can also follow Alex on Twitter at RealAlexBarth for live training camp updates, and head over to 985thesportshub.com to read all his Patriots written coverage from today and training camp moving forward. And same for me at I am Brian Hines on Twitter, and patspulpit.com for all our written Patriots coverage over there as well. So thank you all for tuning in with us today, and we will see you tomorrow at day one of Patriots training camp. We made it. We'll see you guys there.